ನಿಲ್ದಾಣದ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಹೊರಟಿರುವ ರೈಲಲ್ಲಿ एक्सप्रेस दयावती स्टेशन नेताजी भवन कृपया ध्यान दें।
Politically or otherwise, Delhi is very, very unpredictable. We got 20 overs worth of drama in the last 5. 77 scored by Axar, Stubbs and Ashutosh Sharma. How are you watching? Voltas presents Cricbuzz Live. What a finish it was. It woke everyone up. Joy, did we expect that kind of flourish towards the end?
No, I mean, so far it seemed that after that one big over right up front, they seemed to have clawed the game back. The spinners were doing well. The ball was not coming on. And they were about, 111 for 5 in the 15th?
Yep.
And from there, I think the last 5 overs, they really made it count. Some average bowling, some bowling plans that went all right because you don't give away 77, but it was a very, very decent batting performance at the end.
Just the kind of death overs patches that a commentator would love to be on air for.
Oh, you don't get to choose that. You just you do what you do, whatever happens there.
Yeah.
Sometimes actually they're better the other way around.
Yeah.
When the teams can't get any runs. But I think we need to be cognizant of the finishers in the tournament. As I think about it, many a guy has turned up and has just finished with a flourish. And for the Delhi Capitals, Axar today, as well as Tristan Stubbs through the season, he's had to do that sort of thing and has done it with aplomb. He did it last season as well. In fact, last season, I think for them, for a time, he kind of was man alone because each time it seemed he was kind of left on his own and trying to kind of keep them in the game. And as you think about other teams as they go, Rutherford and the way that he's played, Tewatia, same team I know, also has done it once or twice maybe. Tim David for RCB. So the cameo at the back of the game is particularly important when you've had some sort of a setup. It takes you further. When you've not quite gone as quickly as you might like, it takes you into the competitive territory. And this is without sort of seeing what the other team has done on the pitch. It might even be taking you into winning territory.
188 towards the end. They had only 46 Joy in the power play, but they finished with 188 for 5 and a couple of those 30s in this back end of this innings. Rahul 38, Axar Patel 34 as well. Tristan Stubbs 34, 15 for Ashutosh Sharma. Small contributions, but key, very, very key. Clearly, that the last 5 overs were a momentum-shifting passage in this.
They were a momentum, and they've given Delhi a very, very decent chance. It's still perhaps 10-15 short of what they would have wanted to get. But it's a very, very decent score under the circumstances. Because look, the pitch is not coming on. But the only danger is that there seem to be some amount of dew out there. So if they're going to be bowling second, Delhi would be cognizant of the fact the spinners may not get that much purchase. So that's something that they need to have a little bit of cushion. I don't think they have that now. They need to bowl perfectly to do this well.
A lot of teams sort of in Delhi aim for 200, especially teams batting first and the home team, and they end up not reaching there. At what point do you think DC would have said, this is not a 200 plus, let's aim for a smaller number?
It looked very much like when Abhishek Porel and Rahul were together, there was the acceptance that it wasn't easy enough to play shots. And then that calculation of just how long to be cautious and when you're in and should be going is the difficult one to make. Because, I mean, you look at that progression, right? And it's the same pretty much all the way through. What they would have liked is in that first 6 for them to be going in a bit more because there are no fielders out, right? They're just the 2 that are out. But you lose a wicket, you lose another, and then you're trying to sort of bed yourself in and then try and dominate from there. In fact, it slows down with the spinners operating and they go at 7s rather than from 7.5s to 8s. And then that's when those cameos are then, your back's against the wall then. Make sure you're using your resources. Make sure that rather than being sort of 3 and 4 down at the end with 160 on the board, you might as well be 160 for 8 and 9, trying to make sure that you're maximizing. And it worked out because Skipper came in and did a top job, and so did Ashutosh as well as Stubbs.
Abhishek Porel, 49 of 37. Joy, you reckon he would have been told to just go out and have fun and make as many runs as possible while the conditions are slightly better?
Absolutely, and I think he did. Right at the start, he had the 23-run over where he really went after, who was it? Deshpande?
Tushar Deshpande, yes.
Deshpande. But I think this is the problem, he's getting starts. He's got a 40 before this. But what's happening is that what you expect in 49 out of 37, 132 is a decent strike rate. But remember one thing, he is batting at the time when it's the best time for batters to bat. The ball is hard, the field is in. Okay. Now what is happening is when a bat, and those circumstances, if you bat and you get through that period, okay, and you've scored runs, then you're the set batter. You've faced 15, 20, 22 balls. So now you're expected to get on with it even if the field has gone back.
Yeah.
What's been a bit worrying for Delhi would be the fact that he's started with a bang in the 6th and then he's not managed to... I mean, you will slow down a little bit because the field is spread out.
Yeah.
But he's not... After that, he's tended to get bogged down after that 6 over is over. And I think they need him to now... we're literally looking at that and saying he's getting frustrated and there's a wicket loading at this point in time. And that's what happened. I think those are things that, perhaps the KP will talk to him, perhaps, Badani will talk to him and say, how do you get out of that? Because you're doing all the early work, but you're not seeming to finish it.
Barring those 2 overs that Tushar Deshpande gave away, 33 runs in, they didn't do much because the bowlers were doing a pretty good job. The other bowlers, Jofra bowled well, Sandeep Sharma bowled all right as well. So I suppose a bit of credit is due there for the bowlers.
Yeah, I think they did a decent job.
Yep.
For Deshpande, I mean, in the power play, someone's going to go. That's generally how it works.
Yeah.
It's essential to then not be despondent and to ensure that when you come back, it's a whole new battle. You're not carrying the scars of the beginning of the game. Try and be impactful in the time that you have to bowl. And each over is a particularly event for you, and you could be swaying things back in your favour or further in your favour, depending on what's going on. And I thought he came back quite nicely. The skipper has also then got to find times that are opportune to get you into the attack so that you can, I suppose, do your best then, and I think they did that by and large.
That partnership of 63 between Rahul and Abhishek Porel, not so big in terms of strike rate, but given the conditions, I suppose for a change, one must not look at the strike rate.
I think we need to look at the strike rate. We need to look at the strike rate. Look, it's a decent innings, but I think they needed to have got on with it a bit faster. Yeah. And I'm not saying that every ball is worth hitting, but I think there's a little bit more urgency they needed to have shown because you've got to start. See, the big problem now is with the impact sub, every team is batting up to 8.
Yeah.
So there are lots of guys loading. So if you look at the fact that Tristan Stubbs has not got too many balls, Axar hasn't got too many balls, Ashutosh Sharma, those guys, either they're going to get more balls or you got to score faster. And I think that's where their big problem was, that Rahul and Abhishek Porel were bogged down for a bit, and that just set them back. So there's a lot of damage control that happened in the end. Yeah. But I think they were working against the clock then.
Just when they were about to start to take off, they got out of on consecutive overs. Rahul in the 13th, Abhishek Porel in the 14th. And the scorecard would have looked poorer if it wasn't for end-over fireworks from the likes of Stubbs and the captain Axar Patel.
So that calculation on when there's the assessment of what kind of surface you have, if it's not necessarily a good one, and there is the need to somewhat throttle back, there is also a further calculation on what it means to throttle back, right? So you're not going for certain shots, but it doesn't mean you go at a runner ball, because a runner ball will never be enough, right? And if it is, then you're not making the choice to go at a runner ball. You're trying to go at better and just not succeeding. And so that's the bit that happens. And when you have both ends trying to be conservative because the pitch says, then you run into trouble. And I reckon you've always got to ask, and teams are always asking themselves on here, am I doing enough not to be scoring at what is par, to be scoring at what wins us the game, because that's what you're after. You're not after going, oh, par's 180, so you try and score 180. No, you've got to score more than par because then you win the game. And that calculation is not so easy to make. You expect when there are guys that are experienced, that have played there enough times, that have been there a few times, they can make that judgment pretty quickly. And sometimes that can be the difference between winning and losing.
There was great clarity of intent and execution from Stubbs and Axar Patel. They seem to be batting with one goal in mind, and they back themselves and they got the runs.
Absolutely. And I think you look at the kind of shots they hit. Again, it's interesting because, Pommie said something when we were watching the game that actually players like Jofra are easier to play under these circumstances because, you have pace on the ball. And even Ashutosh seemed much more comfortable with pace on the ball. But that's the thing, that when the spinners were on, they just couldn't get going. And then it was up to Axar. And Axar is, mind you, one of the finest players of spin. I mean, he can really whack the spinners. He has that control. He has that ability. I thought those two played a marvellous innings. And Axar and Stubbs in particular, they were superb. And had they got a few more balls, perhaps this could have been an even better total for Delhi, but it wasn't to be.
It's crazy, you watch a game, and if you dial back 1 over or 2 overs, so the extra balls that a guy gets, it shifts what decision must be made. So situation of the game normally just tells you what you've got to do. But there are pockets in the game where you need to decide which the right thing is. When Stubbs and Axar and Ashutosh come in, there are no choices to be made. There's just how are you going to execute upping this run rate? That's it. And so there's clarity. And that's why sometimes guys come in and they can do the job well. It's in the times where there is either this way or this way that there can be many an error. 20
mini events in a T20 innings, and that last over had so much happening. 4 wides, a no ball, a 6 and a 4. Was that the fear of Ashutosh? It was an 11 ball over.
Yeah, if you're Ashutosh, I mean, he was trying to do 2 or 3 things. One was a slow bounce, so he was trying to execute, and then he was trying to sort of get into the pads and get that swinging Yorker here where he can't dig it out and really can't put any strength behind it. So what happens in a situation like that, I think the no ball is something that he'd be looking at and saying that I'm better. The rest, it can happen to you. His bouncer was just that fraction above. It was, remember, it was a no ball. It was of a review that it was given a wide finding, and the rest of it. That's what I'm saying. That in these overs, in these final overs, execution is a very, very difficult thing. And remember, till then he'd bowled 3 overs for 14 runs. He'd bowled absolutely marvellously. So these things happen, and. I think, that one no ball is something you'd look at and say, you can't afford to bowl a no ball.
One of my favourite passages of play in this innings was the 19th over. The Jofra Archer bowled a couple of really smart shots from Ashutosh, but you can't really hold that against Archer. In this format, the best will get hit for runs like that there.
So what's happening and what has happened over the years is that, and often when you bowl, you kind of feel you need one more fielder out. Like somewhere, can we please have 6 rather than 5? Because as soon as fielders in on this side, then batter kind of knows what you're doing by and large, so is ready for that. It still takes great skill to be able to execute what you want to execute. With pace on the ball, as I said, on this particular pitch, which was kind of holding up, it made it that bit easier for the guys that came on. They could just use the pace. And it isn't to say that it was necessarily a bad ball. It'd be cramped and everything, and they would get inside the line and manage to work it offside because the fielder's up on that side. And then if it wasn't, if it was in the block hole, dig it out, open the face of the blade, and it goes finer of that. Not a lot you can do as the bowler.
In the last 5 overs, you saw 2 overs of spin from Tikshana and Hasaranga, 2 from Sandeep Sharma, and 1 from Jofra. 77 of the last 5. Let's take a look at the bowling card and try and understand if the captain could have done something different. Perhaps an extra over or 2 of spin, Joy, would that have helped, or did they use these resources well enough?
I think that he did a fair job of using the resources. Riyan Parag, he bowled him for 1 over, but the point is that Parag at that point in time had Axar come in. Anybody who's really swinging, he couldn't afford to take that chance. Remember, he was bowled at the time when Porel and Rahul were still sort of meandering in the middle. And so he couldn't have given him over later. Okay. So I think they bowled their 9 overs of spin. They bowled well. I think the bowling resources were well used. I don't see any problem with the bowling resources. I think they would have looked to themselves and said that instead of 77, had we got for about 55, 60 in the last 10, that would have been something we would have lived with earlier. But it wasn't due to lack of any tactical decision that seemed glaring for me.
Abhishek Porel at the end of the innings said it is a slowish surface. Dew hasn't yet come in, but expected to come in. Now 189 to chase. Jaiswal, Samson at the top. One guy goes big, one guy stays. How do they approach 189?
Nobody stays. It doesn't work like that. You got to use the power play, and one guy might be going, and therefore is the one needs to be fed the strike. But whoever is going on the night is the one who will try and take responsibility, and the other, not through a lack of trying, but because the partnership kind of works that way on the night, might have to rotate it that way. But both at the beginning will try and go, utilize the fact that there are two fielders outside the circle, and if you can get ahead of the game, then you're quite happily ahead of the game. They have to be judicious in the way they go about things, because if it's slow and they keep just trying to hit length out the ground, then it possibly goes straight up in the air. And the bowlers have had a look at what it's like, and so they'll be better informed on which the skills are that they need to employ, like slower balls.
Mukesh Sharma has come in for Abhishek Porel. There's Mitchell Stark. Then there are three spinners, Axar, Patel, Kuldeep Yadav and Vipraj Nigam. I wonder if Dew will come in, and if that does, it will have an impact on what the bowlers do. Very quickly, gentlemen, power play predictions. I'm going to go with 50.
I was going 55, now I'll say 57.
I had a number. It was 67. There you go.
There you go. You can leave your predictions as well in the comment section. Enjoy the second innings and make sure you come back and watch us once again at the end of it on Voltas presents Cricbuzz Live. Bye-bye.
दिल्ली में आपका स्वागत
Hyderabad Express, Rajasthan Station, Netaji Obot.